together for Tim Ranger!
Keep it going for Max, everybody. That's crazy. I'm so excited to be here. Let's get another round of applause for Tall Tales. I was so excited to do this show, and then I asked, I was like, oh, what's the topic? And they're like, health. And I was like, what's that supposed to mean? What are you implying? Was this an intervention to get me to stop eating McDonald's twice a week? Get out of here. What, do you want me to stop doing all my grocery shopping in convenience stores? I'm not going to do that. Yes, no one should be getting their lunch meat from a 7-Eleven. I'm treating Skittles like a source of vitamins. But I live my life how I live my life. So I didn't know, I was like, what story am I going to tell about health? But I got one for you. It's coincidentally also the story about a dog named Molly. You guys are laughing like you know my past. Like, dog named after drugs. I know this dude. I know him. But yeah, so at the time, this is like 9 years ago, I was living with 3 other dudes, and I still slept in the basement. At the time, I was working for Victoria's Secret, or as we call it in the biz, Vicky's Hush Hush. I was an informant for their loss prevention department. So I was working like a normal shift for reporting back to the managers and like anyone stealing. At the time, I was also doing a lot of cocaine because I was deep undercover. I was dedicated to the job. Are you kidding me? A lot of shit was adding up. I was beginning to think this whole thing was bigger than any of us could have expected. I thought it went to the top. I thought Vicky was behind it all. So I come home one day after a long day of chasing bra bandits, just weary-eyed but coked to the gills because that's how dedicated I am to the badge. And there's a strange dog in my apartment, freaking the fuck out. She's doing that hurricane thing that dogs do. You know, when they just spin around like your heart on Molly. That's how she got her name. But I come home and there's this dog. And all I can think is, who sent you? Was it Vicky? Did Vicky send you? And my buddy was like, no, we got a dog. And that's how I met Molly. And she wasn't undercover. She was a civilian. She wasn't canine. But it's weird, like, having a dog in this house where it's just like 3 guys, like, there is no alpha. And I feel like dogs always need, like, structure. And we were just coke goblins, just fucking running about, like, and she matched our energy all the way, because she did that hurricane thing, like, 30 times a day. And she wasn't the best dog, but we weren't the best dog owners. So eventually 2 of my roommates move out, and they move up to Vermont, and it was one of their dogs. They left the dog. They're like, when I get settled, I'll send back for her. Like it was like the 1920s or something. I'll send for you. But when they moved out, that's when I started to go deep undercover. I got real bad with my drug using and drinking every night. And I called my friend who moved to Vermont, my best friend at the time. He was like, why don't you just like come up here, kind of cool down for a minute, you know, get a break, maybe pause on the investigation. And I was like, you know what, that's like a great idea. So I was like, that's it, I'm fucking getting clean. And the best way to do that is to get as dirty as possible. So I bought like an 8-ball the night before I was supposed to leave. And when I left in the morning, I only had a half gram of meth. Yeah. I had done all the coke and managed to pick up methamphetamines. Because I heard that was good for driving. Right? Like a lot of truckers use meth. And I was like, well, this is a 6-hour drive. I better be ready. So this is when I realized, like, I had never driven with Molly before. So before I load her into the car, I just look at her like real intense, like, and I'm like, you better be fucking cool. And I think she understood because I got her in the car and we started driving and she was the calmest I had ever seen her. She was just watching the scenery. It was November, so the leaves were changing. It was beautiful. And I was fucking tweaking. Oh my, but I was making great time. I was making fantastic time. I was seeing moves 10 cars ahead of me. I was like, fuck yes, left lane, right lane. I get why truckers do it. But we developed a routine though, me and Molly. Every rest stop we would pull off, I'd get a bump, she'd get a walk. And then we'd be fucking cruising again. So this happened a bunch, bump, walk, we're cruising. And then I start to see signs, Lake Champlain Ferry now closed. And I'm like, sucks for whoever has to take the ferry, I'm fucking driving. And about 2 miles down a road called Lake Champlain Ferry Highway, I start to realize I haven't seen a car in a little while. That's strange. And I scroll up on the GPS, and sure enough, like my path just is surrounded by green, but eventually is now surrounded by blue. And I'm like, that's not good. So I drive the 2 miles back down Lake Champlain Highway Road, and I park the car. I get a bump, Molly gets a walk. And I'm like, I'm trying to find on the GPS another way to get into Vermont without crossing the border, because I didn't think I was in any state to do that. Canada did not seem like an option. So I'm walking Molly, and I gotta say, this dog on the leash was a nightmare. This dog on the leash, she would like hurt your shoulder. Like my one friend actually had his shoulder pulled out of the socket by her. And so I'm walking, I'm looking, and I find another ferry about a half mile away. And I realize I have enough meth for one more bump. And I'm like, I should save it for the ferry, and then I immediately do it. Just without even, like, I should probably save that. Oh, and and I don't know if you guys have ever done uppers, but there's like a certain hollowness and emptying that comes with like the last hit in a bag. And it's almost as if someone's like taken out a little bit of your soul from the inside. And I felt just fucking rotten. And I realized for the first time Molly isn't pulling on the leash. She's just sitting. And I look up and we're at like a riverbank. And the river is flowing past one of those old like mills, with the big wheel, and there's a little waterfall, and it's the perfect temperature where the mist from the waterfall is like freezing on the tree, and it's just beautiful. It's like a painting. And I realized like in that moment, like that everything belonged there, or at least everything seemed like it belonged there, but I didn't feel like I belonged there. Yeah, it felt like this, like somebody was painting it, and then they got to me, and they're like, they just didn't know. Like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, as if like I felt like I was static, and like in that moment, I didn't want drugs, but I didn't want to get clean. Like, I didn't want to take the ferry. I didn't want to drive home. I just wanted to feel like I belonged in the painting. And we get back in the car, me and Molly, and we drive down to the new ferry. And there's something that she sensed, because she put her head on my lap for the first time. And it was like she was like comforting me, and like saying like, I forgive you. And we get to the ferry, and the park right on the ferry. So Molly's a smart dog, and she knows that when I put the car in park, I get a bump, she gets a walk. But this is the first time where I don't get a bump, and she doesn't get a walk. And she turns to me, and then flips the fuck out. We're surrounded by cars on this ferry, and she's just in my head like, rah, 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 rah. And I'm just fucking miserable, like half crying. I'm just like, rah, 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 rah. And the cars are all looking at me, and I'm just like, oh, God. This is the lowest moment of my life. We get across the Lake Champlain, and then I gotta be honest, I don't remember what happened in Vermont. I don't remember many things from Vermont. I remember getting thrown out of a bar for being drunk, and I was like, I'm not even blacking out yet. I remember everyone telling me I needed to eat Vermont white cheddar, which Vermont, like, get over yourself. It's just fucking cheese. It's so, like, it's... I remember the looks on my friends' faces when I got there. And I remember stealing $25 from my best friend at the time for gas to get home. I remember trying to sneak out without anyone seeing me. But Molly was there. And I feel like I needed to bring her back home to prove that I could be forgiven. Figured that there's one being in this world that forgives me for me. And we get back in the car and we start driving, and the closer we get back to home, like at first we get in the car, I'm like, I'm fucking clean, that's it, I quit everything. But the closer we got back to home, where I knew I could get drugs, the more the nag starts again. And I'm starting to realize I don't have enough gas to get home. And I'm kind of freaking out, but Molly's cool and stoic. She's everything I needed in that moment. I pull into a rest stop. It's like at the tip of New Jersey. I don't even remember the rest stop's name. And I'm tearing my car apart looking for change. And some guy comes over and he starts asking me questions about Molly. And I'm just like, I'm so fucking raw and fed up. And this guy's like, what kind of dog is it? I was like, a barking kind. I don't know. It's a fucking dog. Look at it. You think I know? Look at me right now. Like, I'm a mess, man. And eventually he asked so many questions. I was like, dude, can I get $10? And he looked at Molly, and he looked at me. He looked at the dog again, and he's like, you're not going to use this for drugs, are you? And it felt like it was the painter of the painting asking me, do you belong in the painting? And I was like, no, I'm not going to use it for drugs. And he gave me the $10. I filled up half a tank, well, $5 worth. So I needed cigarettes. Cigarettes don't count as drugs in the story, or in NA or AA. And I drove home, and my buddy's like, why did you bring Molly back? And I was like, I can't tell you how much I need her. And I did drugs again. It would be such a nice story if I didn't, but I used for about another 2 months. But I got clean, I got off all uppers, I quit alcohol. I still smoke weed because it's 2023. But I was talking to my mom, I was telling my mom this story, and she stopped and I was telling her where I parked and everything, and she goes, do you mean the old wool mill that's at the end of Lake Champlain Ferry Highway? And I was like, yeah, that's the exact. And she told me a story about how her and my dad were going to Vermont once, and they stopped at that, and they just stayed there for a half hour and just were in amazement of like how beautiful it was. And I didn't know where Molly was leading me, but she led me back to the people that I need in my life the most. And when a dog pulls your arm on a leash, fucking listen to that dog. Thank you guys.